Just want to thank everybody for coming today. It's always good to be back in the same room with everybody. This is our 16th year of basketball in Oklahoma City. We're super excited about that. We don't take that for granted, and I was thinking about, as I was getting ready to make some of these remarks, the image that we sent out last week or something like that about the unveiling of the logo from 15 years ago. And I really kind of sat with that for a little bit when you think about all that's happened in those 15 years. So many great players that have come, have gone, followed by other great players, all the different experiences that we've had as a team, as an organization, as a community. It was really great thinking about all the different people that have been a part of that. And then I thought, well, how many guys are still in the league from that point in time? And there's like 5% of the NBA is still in the NBA from the time that that thing dropped off. So it gives you also a better perspective on that's a long time, and there's a lot of careers that went the entire distance during that period of time. But I also thought about like what is the through line for those 15 years? And I think the through line for those 15 years, that was the same when we showed up in 08, and the logos behind me were at the Skirvin were not even the Thunder logo, but that like kind of no frills cornflakes logo. The through line is trying to put together an elite basketball organization that could support elite basketball teams. And that's been the constant throughout the entire time we've been here. And, for the next 15 years, that's going to be the focus again. And we're super excited about that. With respect to kind of where we are now, we're 3 draft classes in to the pivot that we made a few years ago. Now, 2 of those draft classes have played for us. The third hasn't played a minute, but in a couple months, they'll take the floor, and we'll be into 3 draft classes, and we're excited about the collection of guys that we have, both as people and players. So we're looking forward to that and getting those guys acclimated with the current group. I also spent some time thinking about the season over the summer, and one of the things that I turn to, because I think we always look back on our own histories when we think about things and reflect on things, was a book I was given when I was in college called Values of the Game by Bill Bradley. And I think most people here know who Bill Bradley is. It was a really impactful book for me because it really kind of, again, it's like part of those through lines that exist in all kinds of sports. And I think it's definitely relevant to a lot of the things that everybody loves about basketball, and that it really starts kind of at a young level, and a lot of those things that we learn about the game and we take with us are early on. But it also made me realize that I don't have a lot of new or novel thoughts about this particular season as we're approaching it. And part of that is, to me, is like, okay, because it's kind of where we are as a team. And part of that monotony or the drudgery of having to kind of start fresh year after year is part of it's kind of like a touchstone for lasting success. So I don't know that I'm going to have a whole lot of new insight for you. I'll answer all your questions, but there's just a lot about the team that is still undefined, and there's a lot of questions you're going to ask me, and I'm going to say, I don't know the answer to that. I think in today's day and age, it's more constant that people take really hard stands with like a very shallow amount of knowledge, and they just say it really loud rather than just say, and that's taken more seriously than basically saying, I'm not sure about that. Like, I don't really know how that's going to go, or I don't know how much that person's going to play. I'd rather not be in the business of predictions, but I think with where we are, it's mostly about observations, and we're good with that. If you think about, just to give you an illustration of that, a year ago at this time, the number one question you guys were asking was, is Shea okay? But not for the reasons you're thinking. because he sprained his MCL, and that was a big deal this time, but no one's thinking about that right now. Isaiah Joe wasn't on the team. You wouldn't have to be here right now if you wagered that Jay Will would get 8 and 8 in a playing game. You could be on a beach somewhere, relaxing, not having to listen to me. For some of you, for the 15th or 16th year, that's why we always remind our scouts and our evaluators that there are two types of forecasters. Okay, there's those that don't know, right, and there's those that don't know that they don't know, and that keeps us super humble with respect to predicting things or assuming that we have answers, that there's just no way we could have the answers. So we kind of walk through that pretty open-minded, and you just got to get used to dealing with a lot of uncertainty. Now, we've been dealing with a lot of uncertainty the last few years. The uncertainty's been different. The questions, I think, this year will be different than they have been in the past. I even resorted to going to the kids in the backseat analogy. I think, Jenny, you might ask that question about when are we going to get there? Is it ever going to work? Are we embarrassing the league? All these types of things. I don't know if those questions are going to come this year. I'm happy to answer them the same time or the same way, because we've been extremely consistent the entire time and very transparent about it. But I still don't have the answers to that. A lot of the things we talked about last year at this point in time, I do think are applicable. One was, we talked a lot about variance, that there was a pretty high or wide bandwidth within what the team was capable of. And the reason why is because we have a really young team. We still have a really young team. We had a very inexperienced team. We still have a pretty inexperienced team. And there's a lot of things that I would call, or we call, the silent forces of the NBA that generally get in the way of young teams succeeding at a high level. And we hit the higher band. You know, we're, as a team that won less than 30 games, there's like a 7% chance that we would end up improving by 16 games. So 93% of the time, that's not happening. In fact, it usually takes, if you're under 30 games, it usually takes 2 years to improve by about 12 and a half games from that point, wherever you start from. So we got very fortunate in a lot of different ways. And that's still with the fact that we finished as an under 500 team. We really struggled to play more than a month of consistent basketball. And, you know, we had a lot of regression during the year, but that regression ultimately led to improved play as the season wore on. And I think that's another key part that this particular team we all understand and accept, and has been the case for a long time, which is that regressions are not necessarily part of a problem, but they are part of a process that you're going through all the time as a basketball team, especially a young team, because in a lot of ways the tools that we use to evaluate certain teams, like the teams that are in an elite state right now, those tools don't necessarily apply particularly well to a young team because it's constantly changing. And then really good basketball, we all know it when we see it, right? And I referenced that 5-minute stretch against Dallas 2 or 3 years ago, where we captured it for a small section of the game. But basketball is not meant to be played perfectly. Like, it's not. It can't be. It's such a hard game to play because you need 5 people in total synchronicity, and that takes a lot of work. And then when you do get it, you lose it within the game, right? It's very elusive to play at that level all the time, and that's, I think, a big part of for us is we're going to need time to build that synchronicity. So those segments of the game where we're really in sync are more common, you know, and we can spot them more often. We talked about play style. I believe personally that play style is really where the upward bound is for this particular team. A lot of the roots of that play style were put in place in the 2021 season, right, when we first started this pivot. I think looking back, a lot of people would say that we made the most progress last year, I think we saw more signs of progress. But I think the most accelerated progress we made was that season in terms of installing a lot of those stylistic things that Mark put in place, and most importantly, those were scalable, right? Those were scalable things that we could build on each season, and we've done that. And 5 or 6 years ago in the league, the phraseology that was probably most common was make a play, make a play. I think for our particular team, the upward bound is serve the game. Serve the game. Play the play that's in front of you. What's the most natural play to take place? And what's the play that should happen? That gets the team playing, at its capability. We define capability as a notch above your natural talent level. Like a notch above your natural talent level that you're capable of, but you may not be able to hit every single night out until you get enough reps under your belt as a unit, and then that standard starts to grow. The other thing about play style that's so critical for our team, and I think it's a real credit to Mark and the coaches, is the way we play has allowed us to absorb a lot of different talent. So when we started the season last year, our system wasn't fixed. There were some principles to it, but J-Dub was not playing the role that he played at the end of the season. Josh Giddey wasn't playing the role that he was playing by the end of the season. We were able to absorb those players without anyone else losing their efficiency, right? And that's a process that we had to go through, and it didn't just happen overnight. Now, this is, and a lot of people are talking about this being Chet's first season, and it is in one sense, but it's really our first season with Chet more than it's Chet's first season. And so our ability to absorb him in a way that allows him to play efficiently while everybody else can be a part of that as well is one of the strengths of the way that we play stylistically, and part of the reason why we took this approach, and also with this particular style of player 3 to 4 years back. And I'm really excited because it's not going to be something that just rolls out and you try to box up. In fact, I would really be scared if we were latching on to whatever we see early, because we'd be cutting off all our possibilities, over time. And that's, Mark talks about discovering the team a lot. And to me, again, like the way I see that is discovering the team is watching the same thing that everybody else is watching over and over and over again, but thinking about it in different ways. And I think that's how Isaiah Joe finds his way onto the floor. Dub makes a bit of an ascent, but not in a way that compromises the play style of anybody else. In fact, the team gets harder to guard. I used the spinal tap example at this time last year, and so most of you are not old enough to know what spinal tap is. But if someone's turned up to 11, nobody can play well. You know what I mean? No one can play well. So finding on the mixing board the right levels for everybody. Now that's also going to change over the course of time, because the team is changing all the time. When you have young players, I mean, I just came from walk past the gym coming in here, and those players look different than they did a few months ago. And that's going to be the case for 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years. And so each step of the way, we have to really stay open to where the signal is, but the framework in which we're putting the players really allows them to flourish and play well as a unit. So I'm really excited about that. The other thing that we talked about a lot in terms of things that get in the way of young teams, because it's not necessarily talent, right? There's a lot of extremely young, talented teams, but they have a harder time prioritizing all the different distractions and things that come into a team dynamic, in today's day and age. And that's why I call those things these silent forces. Statistics, and I think we've done an exceptional job. Like, part of getting the upward bound and getting a 7% outcome was because our players did an excellent job prioritizing these things and overcoming them. Now the reality is, whether you're a young team or an old team, you're still going to have to do that. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to do that. Statistics, personal ambitions, accolades, off-court opportunities. These things are important. They're not important, but they have to come in the right order, right? If you want to win at the highest level, and I think we did a pretty good job of that last year. Otherwise, we wouldn't have reached that higher bandwidth. Communication, internal communication, right? Especially in a world today where majority of communication is done through texting or email or technology. That don't work in sports, right? You can't text someone in the game, pass me the damn ball, I'm open. It helps if you can talk to another person, right? And when you engage somebody personally in a team dynamic, right, you are basically telling them they matter to the team. So having that kind of internal communication is hard for younger teams. I think it's going to get harder because there's not as much, personal interaction because of technology. Technology is incredible. It's great. It's accelerated us so far. It's supposed to be saving us time, right? That's what technology is supposed to do. But what are we doing with the time, right? That's a bigger issue, right? For a different day and different business. But we have to have good internal communication with a young team, and I thought our guys did a pretty good job of that last year as well. Impatience, that's another aspect, right? Younger players have failed to see sometimes that the 82 game season is not a day-to-day referendum. What it is an opportunity to figure out how good you can become by the end of the season, right? Even a team that wins 50 games, right, is going to go 2-8 during the season. Majority of 50-win teams have a 2-8 stretch, right, or are going to lose 4 or 5 games in a row. When you're younger, you might not understand that, and that might seem like a huge, issue, and you start to lose your footing. But having good emotional leadership within a team is a big part of navigating an 82-game season. And what I feel really optimistic about, and I said this to J-Dub recently when we were talking, is the team for a younger group had a pretty nice level of poise and what I would call calm endurance through the year. It was very unusual, and one of the reasons I was extremely optimistic about what we accomplished last year. I thought the 16-win improvement was great, and probably some type of pretty high level, like net rating flip, all that. But these other aspects that are really more tangible, that drive performance over time, those are the things we have to hold on to. And I think we had that kind of calm endurance during the year, even when we were playing down the stretch and we weren't playing our best basketball. We stayed with our identity and who we are and how we operate. And we ended up getting what it is that we were hoping to get, which was some playing experience. But we handled our business in a way that was, I think, wise beyond our years, and that's a credit to the players. The other thing that's a silent force, I think we all know, is just all the noise that surrounds teams and sports. Social media is now the 5th major sport in North America. It's a competitive sport. It's a performance sport, and anybody can play it. And generally speaking, the people that are the loudest and the most controversial make the all-star team, right? So, that's a reality. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it, but it has to be put in its proper place and not be allowed into a dynamic that really needs unity, right? Because social media is a hyper-individualistic endeavor, and it has great value, but it also erodes your responsibility to other people because it's so focused on you, right? It's so focused, and it can be focused on you coming in. I think everyone here is thinking about hyper-individualism, meaning focus going out. No, it can really target individuals and compromise the way they think, right, about themselves or their performance or what their incentive should be. Our players did an excellent job with that last year, and I'm really proud of, like, again, like the emotional leadership that was shown within the team is really, really special. But as a team, an organization, you have to realize that everyone has a circle, right, that is well-meaning, loves them, and wants them to do extremely well individually, right? And those people are critical and are a big part of the journey, whether it's family members, agents, sponsors, it could be anybody, right? But they're not necessarily thinking about team performance first, right? So that's a balance that's very hard for young teams to take on. I thought our guys did a really good job of that. So these are the silent forces that are there all the time. They're not just there for young teams, they're there for older teams. They're there in your lives, they're there in my life, right? And in reality, what it requires is that there needs to be like a daily rebellion every day within a team that wants to win to overcome those forces, because the forces don't overwhelm the people or the organization. The people and the organization fail to overwhelm the forces, because you have to go toward them and recognize they're there and take them apart so that you can ultimately get what everybody says they want to get, which is to win and win consistently. And the problem with that is you never graduate from it. But older, more experienced teams that I've been around in San Antonio and here, they compartmentalize that a little bit differently. They've seen that movie before. I thought our guys were well ahead of the game on that. But we have to start over and build that mentality and that endurance up again. The other thing that, and I talked about this with Shay recently, is the rate of learning that we had last year. We talked about this at the beginning of the year. Because we're so young and we're so inexperienced in a lot of ways, our rate of learning has to outpace that age and inexperience. Things that could take 2 to 3 months for a lot of teams to absorb and learn from in terms of regression or adversity, our guys were getting in 2 to 3 weeks. And that was a big reason why we had a 7%, we hit that 7% high-end bandwidth. Now, if one of these different things, right, wasn't hitting on all cylinders, we could have been, on the negative side of that bandwidth very quickly. But we have to do a good job of that. And the learning happens out of order, right? It doesn't happen in succession, right? It's not you finish chapter 1, you get to chapter 2. It's very random when it comes at you. You play well for a little bit and then you play poorly. You don't know why. Why do we suck right now? Like, that could be a lot of different things. The guys don't learn in sequence. It's not a class, and that's when, like, we talk about the discovery part, because we're never going to fix all these issues. We have to stay open, and we have to look at all the different options so we can figure out where the highest bound, where the upper bound is. And I'll give you one example of this. We were sitting there several years ago, and we had Chris Paul, Dennis, and Shay. And if we were to follow an orthodox methodology, you would say 2 can be on the court, but you can't play 3. Who do you think probably gets the short end of the stick? The young guy.
Yeah.
The young guy gets the short end of the stick. Okay. And think about where we would be if we compromise that pathway. And I said, you have to wait, because we don't think we can play 3 point guards at the same time, because no one else has done that. Well, you have to throw it out there. Now, it could blow up in your face. Mark changes the lineup at halftime a third of the time. It doesn't work every time, right? But the ability to expand your comfort zone, to try these things, is what gives you opportunity to find different opportunities within the team. And I thought we did a good job with that in the past, and we'll have to continue to do that. And I know there's different points in time when people would say, well, why are you doing that? No one else does it, or they see that as a sign of not trying. But in reality, like, we won, for people that just see it in very simplistic terms, we won 16 more games. So are we not trying, or are we actually trying to find things and do things a little bit differently, accepting some risk along the way, because that's natural, and some of it's really going to blow up in our face, and that's fine, because the one or two things we find, like maybe Shea getting a bunch of minutes in that dynamic, playing off the ball, honing some scoring skills, we're bearing the fruit of that. It gave us more confidence to say, hey, here's the ball. We haven't seen you play full-time point guard before, but let's give that a go. And we gave him a full maximum contract after he played 100 games, right? And we didn't have a ton of team success with that, but we saw enough because we had explored those outer bounds a little bit. So just kind of to wrap things up, as I always say, what we're after is sustained high performance over a long period of time. And we're going to accept the fluctuations and the randomness that comes with looking at something in a wider spectrum. That there's going to be part of that. We're still, the improvements that we made last season, like I said, it usually takes teams 2 years to, if you're under 30 wins, to average 12 and a half more wins. So we did it in one season. So we're stealing from the future somewhere, right? We are very fortunate. Things went very well for us. There's a lot of reasons why, like randomness and also a lot of our own hard work, but there'll be some regression in that. And like I said before, the regression just shines a light on the things that we need to address and work on, and that's part of the process, not necessarily part of an issue. But we also know the psyche of the era that we play in and that we compete in. We know people will lose their mind. We know that people will hurry quickly to parse data and put up video clips from the 57th game of the season, taking really strong positions that the future of the franchise is in peril because someone's having a bad 8-game stretch. I think we saw that at the beginning of the season last year when Josh had a slow start. But that's part of the regression that is part of the process. We have to be able to see that. For us, we can't be emotional or impulsive, because if we do that, all the progress that we've made and all the investment that we've made will get multiplied by 0. And this is not a thing where, when you get to the bottom, you go to the top of the slide, right? This is a thing where if you become impatient, irrational, or give into those defaults, right, you can end up either stuck on the mountain or at the very bottom of the mountain again, right? So we have to be really delicate with that. Understanding that part of being a fan is being passionate about it, we have to look at it a little bit differently. I will say we're going to be a better team by the end of the season. I said that last year. I feel confident saying that again. The team, as it gains more experience together, and we've added, I think, more talent to the team as well, but the synchronicity and the time together and the experience shared, I think we'll become a better team. Now, will that amount in a symbolic achievement that people generally associate with being better? I can't speak to that. I don't know. I couldn't have told you that last year. I'm not gonna make a prediction that what's gonna happen. I'm confident we'll be a better team, and I think that's gonna happen for a while. We could look worse in some areas because we're going back and we're not fitting Chet into the team that finished the season last year, because the team that finished the season last year, that's over. That season's over. We couldn't do that. There was a lot of adaptation and modifications that took place through the year to even get to that point. We have to kind of start from baseline again and try to learn the team and then try to shepherd it through the season so that we can get the best performance out of the group that's capable of right now. Like I said, capability is a notch above the natural ability. And we're really looking forward to that. But it's going to be a long process as we go through it. What I say to our fans is, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride. We have a great group of young guys, and they work hard. really hard. Now, I can't speak to every single guy because I'm not with them all the time, but there's not many times I walked into this building that Trey Mann hasn't been in this building. Okay, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl has been in this building. Okay, these guys are wearing this place out, and that's, I always worry about highlighting anyone because we got guys all over the world, right, that are busting their tail. And the reason why is because they really want to do well for the city and the team and themselves. And they've had that level of commitment since they've arrived. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. And if they didn't, they'd kind of probably at this point have gotten flushed out of the system. And I would just say they're going to need encouragement. They're going to need support. They're still one of the youngest teams in the league. There's still a lot of inexperience, and there's going to be a lot coming at them. And one day we want to have a real home court advantage again. And we understand that we have to earn that, as is the case in professional sports everywhere. But we're really excited about the opportunity to have a chance to go out and do that again. But this season is one chapter in what we hope is going to be a pretty long story for the Thunder. And in the spirit of the 15 years, if you look at it, since 1976, when the ABA and the NBA merged, there hasn't been a more successful first 15 years of expanded team or relocated team. And that's more than half the league. And there's some pretty damn good organizations in that group. But it didn't have to go that way. One thing here or there, someone doesn't develop, someone gets hurt, chemistry on a team isn't right. It's like adjusting the steering on like a Formula One car. Like one little thing and can throw the whole thing off because it's so fragile. And so the first 15 years went exceptionally well. But it wasn't written in stone. We weren't entitled to it, right? A lot of good fortune had to happen. And as they say, you can't step in the same stream twice. We stepped in a good stream. We got lucky. Even the toughest parts of that were pretty good. And I think as time goes on, you can appreciate, I know we do, how fortunate we've been in so many ways, especially with the type of players and people that we've had. But you know, you cannot be wise with another man's experience. We had to go through that to learn what it is that we've learned about trying to build the best basketball team in Oklahoma City with a set of values that people here would appreciate and would resonate with them. And so the next 15 years, the second mountain, is what we're focused on now. With the experience that is our own, that we're not mimicking anyone else, we're not imitating anyone else. We're applying those first 15 years and trying to see if we can do better. Trying to see if we can do it again, where we put ourselves in position where we're playing extremely meaningful games when it gets warm out. And when you're driving to the game, and most of the games are played in the cold when you're driving, but when it starts to warm up and you have your windows down, that's when we want to be playing. But it's a long process, it requires a lot of discipline, and there's no promises. So that's why we're approaching it the way we have for the first 15 years. But we're really excited for it. So I appreciate you letting me express my thoughts to the fans, to all the people that really care about this team and this organization, have supported it for a long time. And I just think back to when that logo dropped, and I don't think there was more than one potential artery to where we are today. And we dodged the raindrops to get here, and now we gotta we gotta bust our tail to do it again.
Hey Sam, you talked about hitting the high